Have you ever been stuck in traffic, late for work, and thought to yourself, I pay taxes for this? Or maybe you're looking at your paycheck and noticing that massive chunk that disappeared before the money even hit your account. And you think, what if I just didn't? Here's what nobody tells you. We've all had that fantasy, that little rebellious voice that says, what if everyone just stopped paying taxes? What could they do about it? Here at Simple Money, we've analyzed what actually happens when entire populations stop paying taxes. And today, I'm going to reveal something that might completely change how you think about money, government, and the invisible systems that keep modern life running. So here's what's really happening. Every year, Americans pay over $4 trillion in taxes. That's 4 trillion with a T. To put that in perspective, if you stacked 4 trillion $1 bills, the stack would reach almost 275,000 miles high. That's further than the distance from Earth to the moon. Now, most people think about taxes as this annoying thing the government takes from you, like theft, like someone reaching into your pocket and grabbing your hard-earned money. And I get it, that's what it feels like. But here's the part that should make you think twice about that fantasy of everyone stopping their tax payments. Our entire modern civilization runs on taxes. And I don't mean that in some abstract philosophical way. I mean it literally. Every single thing you did today that you didn't even think about, taxes made it possible. You drove on roads? Taxes. You drank clean water? Taxes. You didn't worry about foreign armies invading? Taxes. The food you ate was inspected for safety? Taxes. And here's where things get interesting. When people stop paying taxes, society doesn't just slow down or become slightly less convenient. It collapses. Completely. In ways most people can't even imagine. Think about it this way. Imagine your body. It needs constant inputs to survive. Food, water, oxygen. Stop any one of these inputs for too long, and systems start shutting down. Your body doesn't gradually become less functional. It crashes. That's what taxes are to a modern society. They're not optional. They're not just nice to have. They're the oxygen that keeps the entire system alive. Let me walk you through what would actually happen if everyone stopped paying taxes. And I'm going to explain the 5 stages of societal breakdown that would unfold, each one darker than the last. The first stage is what I call the immediate collapse. Here's what most people don't realize. The government doesn't have some massive reserve of money sitting around. It operates on a flow of cash. Money comes in from taxes. Money goes out for services. When the money stops coming in, the money going out stops almost immediately. Within days, not months, not years, days, government employees stop getting paid. And we're not talking about a few bureaucrats in Washington. We're talking about 3 million federal employees, plus millions more at the state and local level. Police officers? They stop showing up for work because they're not getting paid. Firefighters? Same thing. Teachers? Goodbye. Border Patrol agents? Gone. Air traffic controllers? They walk off the job. Now, you might think, well, those people care about their jobs. They wouldn't just abandon their posts. And you'd be wrong. History shows us exactly what happens when government workers stop getting paid. They leave. During government shutdowns, when federal workers go without paychecks, essential services start breaking down within weeks. And those are partial shutdowns where taxes are still being collected and people know they'll eventually get paid. Imagine a complete tax shutdown where nobody's getting paid and there's no end in sight. Police officers have families to feed. Firefighters have mortgages. They can't work for free indefinitely. And here's where things get interesting. The moment people realize there's no law enforcement, human nature takes over. Not everyone's nature. Most people are good, but it only takes a small percentage of bad actors to create chaos. Looting starts, not immediately, but within days. First, it's opportunistic. Someone realizes the store has no security. Word spreads. More people show up. Then, it becomes normalized. Think about what happened during major disasters like Hurricane Katrina or the blackouts in New York. When systems break down even temporarily, some people take advantage. Now imagine that breakdown isn't temporary. It's permanent. The second stage is what I call the safety vacuum. Here's something that might blow your mind. Safety isn't natural. It's manufactured. Every day, you benefit from millions of dollars spent on making your life safer. And you never even notice it. Food inspections that prevent contamination? Taxes. Traffic lights that prevent accidents? Taxes. Building codes that keep structures from collapsing? Taxes. Environmental regulations that keep companies from dumping poison in your water? All taxes. When tax revenue stops, all of these systems stop. Not because people are being vindictive, but because they require constant maintenance, constant oversight, constant funding. Food safety inspectors stop checking meat processing plants. Within weeks, contaminated food starts hitting supermarket shelves. People get sick, some die, and nobody's coordinating recalls because the FDA isn't functioning. Water treatment plants shut down because there's no money for chemicals or maintenance. Sewage starts backing up. Diseases that we thought were conquered, like cholera and typhoid, make comebacks. Hospitals face an impossible situation. Emergency rooms are overwhelmed with sick people, but there's no Medicare or Medicaid payments coming in. Many hospitals operate on thin margins. Without those payments, they start closing. And here's what makes this even more insidious. The people who suffer most are the ones who can least afford it. The poor, the elderly, the vulnerable. Wealthy people can hire private security, they can buy filtered water, they can pay cash for private medical care. But the average person? They're completely exposed. The third stage is what I call the infrastructure death spiral. Let's talk about something you probably never think about. Infrastructure. The roads you drive on. The bridges you cross. The electrical grid that powers your home. The internet cables that connect you to the world. None of this maintains itself. Roads need constant repair. Bridges need inspection and maintenance. Power plants need upgrades. And all of this costs enormous amounts of money that comes from taxes. When tax revenue stops, infrastructure maintenance stops. At first, you don't notice. Roads get a few more potholes. That's annoying but manageable. Bridges develop small cracks. Power outages become slightly more frequent. But infrastructure failure isn't linear. It's exponential. A small crack in a bridge becomes a big crack. A big crack becomes a catastrophic failure. Suddenly, a major bridge collapses. People die, and there's no government funding to rebuild it. The electrical grid starts failing. Not all at once, but piece by piece. A transformer blows and doesn't get replaced. A power plant shuts down for maintenance and never reopens. Rolling blackouts become the norm. Think about what your life looks like without reliable electricity. Your fridge stops working, food spoils, you can't charge your phone. If it's summer, you're sweltering without air conditioning. If it's winter, you're freezing without heat. And here's where things get really dark. Modern cities are completely dependent on infrastructure. They're not designed to be self-sufficient. Food comes from hundreds or thousands of miles away. Water is pumped from distant sources. Sewage is processed by complex systems. When infrastructure fails, cities become unlivable. People start leaving. Not in an orderly way. In a panicked exodus. Millions of people trying to get to somewhere. Anywhere that still has functioning systems. But there is nowhere. Because the infrastructure failure is nationwide. It's not like you can just move to the next state over and everything's fine. The whole system is collapsing. The fourth stage is what I call the economic obliteration. Here's what nobody wants to admit. The economy isn't some separate thing from government. They're intertwined. When government fails, the economy fails. Completely. Think about what enables business to function. Legal systems that enforce contracts. Courts that settle disputes. Patent offices that protect intellectual property. Banking regulations that prevent fraud. Transportation systems that move goods. All of this requires government. All of it requires taxes. When government disappears, business grinds to a halt. Companies can't enforce contracts. If someone doesn't pay you, there's no court to take them to. If someone steals your intellectual property, there's no legal recourse. International trade collapses. Other countries won't do business with a failed state. They can't trust contracts. They can't rely on shipments arriving safely. They can't guarantee payment. The banking system implodes. Banks rely on government insurance. The FDIC, which insures your deposits, is funded by banks paying fees, but those fees are mandated and enforced by government regulation. When government disappears, so does deposit insurance. Bank runs start. People rush to withdraw their money before the bank fails. This creates the very failure they fear. Banks collapse. Your savings disappear. Your retirement fund vanishes. The stock market doesn't just crash, it ceases to function. Stock exchanges require regulations, oversight, and enforcement of rules. Without government, there's no way to ensure fair trading. No way to prevent fraud. The market simply stops. And here's what makes this particularly cruel. Money itself starts losing value. The dollar is backed by the U.S. government. When that government stops functioning, why would anyone accept dollars as payment? Hyperinflation kicks in, not slowly, rapidly. Prices double, then triple, then increase tenfold. Your life savings become worthless pieces of paper. The fifth stage is what I call the complete breakdown. Let's talk about what happens when all the previous stages combine. When you have no law enforcement, no safety systems, no infrastructure, and no functioning economy, society fragments. People form tribal groups for protection, not because they want to, because they have to. Safety in numbers becomes the only safety there is. Warlords emerge. People with guns and willingness to use them take control of areas. They demand payment, not in worthless dollars, but in food, goods, services. It's taxation, but without any of the benefits or accountability. Diseases spread unchecked. Without sanitation systems, without hospitals, without medicine distribution, epidemics ravage the population. Cholera from contaminated water, typhoid from poor sanitation. Respiratory infections from overcrowding as people huddle together for safety. Starvation becomes widespread. Modern agriculture requires complex supply chains. Fuel for tractors, fertilizers, pesticides, seeds, transportation to markets. All of this breaks down without government coordination and infrastructure. And here's the darkest part. The death toll would be catastrophic. Not millions, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. The majority of the U.S. population couldn't survive without the complex systems that taxes support. Think about where your food comes from. Most people have maybe a week's worth of food in their house. When supermarkets empty and don't restock, what do you eat? Can you grow your own food? Do you have land, seeds, knowledge? Most people don't. Now, let me tell you about two people, Marcus and Elena. They both live in the same city. Both have similar jobs and lives. Both hear about a growing tax resistance movement. Marcus thinks it sounds great. He's always resented paying taxes. He joins the movement. He stops filing. He encourages his friends to do the same. He feels empowered, rebellious, free. As more people join, the government tries to collect, but they're overwhelmed. They can't arrest everyone. The movement grows. Tax revenue plummets. Within months, government services start shutting down. Marcus celebrates at first. See, we don't need them. But then his neighborhood police station closes. Break-ins increase. His car gets stolen and there's nobody to report it to. His street develops massive potholes that never get fixed. His water starts tasting funny. His kid's school closes because teachers aren't being paid. Marcus's company, which had government contracts, goes bankrupt. He loses his job. The economy is collapsing. He can't find new work because most businesses are failing. His savings are becoming worthless as the dollar crashes. Now he's scared. He has a family to protect. But there's no protection. The systems he took for granted are gone. And they're not coming back because there's no money to rebuild them. Now let me tell you about Elena. Elena hears about the tax resistance movement, and she thinks about it differently. She asks herself, what would actually happen if this succeeded? She does the research. She looks at countries where tax collection collapsed. Greece, during its debt crisis. Argentina. Venezuela. She sees the pattern. Economic collapse. Social breakdown. Suffering. Elena understands something crucial. She doesn't love paying taxes. Nobody does. But she recognizes that taxes aren't theft. They're the price of civilization. The cost of having roads, schools, hospitals, police, courts, clean water, and all the invisible systems that make modern life possible. When the tax resistance movement grows, Elena doesn't join. She keeps paying. Not because she's a rule follower, but because she understands the alternative. She sees what's coming. As society breaks down, Elena has prepared. She has skills. She has a network. She has savings in multiple forms. She understands that the breakdown isn't liberation, it's catastrophe. The difference between Marcus and Elena isn't that Elena loves government or enjoys paying taxes. It's that Elena understands systems. She understands that complex societies require complex support structures, and those structures require funding. Here's what most people don't realize. The question isn't whether you like paying taxes. The question is whether you like the alternative. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to talk about. We take civilization for granted. We assume that safety, clean water, paved roads, and functioning hospitals are just the natural state of things. They're not. They're achievements, hard-won achievements that require constant maintenance and constant investment. When you turn off the funding, everything collapses. Not slowly, not gradually, catastrophically. But here's where things get really interesting. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to love taxes or think the government spends money perfectly. Most governments waste money. That's true. Most governments could be more efficient. Also true. But the solution to government waste isn't eliminating taxes. It's fixing government, demanding accountability, voting for better leaders, pushing for reforms, engaging with the system to make it better. Because the alternative, the fantasy of everyone just stopping tax payments and somehow everything working out fine, that's not freedom. That's chaos. It's not liberation. It's destruction. Think about it this way. Taxes are like paying rent on civilization. You might think your rent is too high. You might think your landlord could maintain the building better. Those are legitimate complaints. But the solution isn't to stop paying rent and hope the building maintains itself. The solution is to negotiate better terms, to demand better service, to hold your landlord accountable. Civilization works the same way. You have the right to demand better government, to push for lower taxes or different spending priorities, to vote for change, but you don't have the right to opt out entirely and still expect to benefit from everything taxes provide. The immediate collapse, the safety vacuum, the infrastructure death spiral, the economic obliteration, and the complete breakdown aren't hypothetical. They're what happens in every society where tax collection fails. History has shown us this pattern repeatedly. The question isn't whether you want to pay taxes. Nobody wants to. The question is whether you're willing to accept what happens when nobody does. Because that world isn't the libertarian paradise some people imagine. It's a nightmare. A nightmare where the strong prey on the weak, where children die from preventable diseases, where violence becomes the norm, where survival is uncertain. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Not whether taxes are annoying, they are. Not whether government wastes money, it does. But whether you're willing to give up everything that taxes provide, every safety net, every public service, every piece of infrastructure, every protection. Because in a world without taxes, you don't just lose government services, you lose civilization itself. You lose the complex web of systems that keep you alive and safe without you even realizing it. You lose the invisible hand that prevents society from descending into chaos. The next time you're frustrated about taxes, remember this. You're not just paying for government employees and programs. You're paying for the privilege of living in a society where you can go to sleep without fear, where you can drink water without getting sick, where you can drive without worrying about bridges collapsing, where you can build a life without constant threat of violence. That's not a small thing. That's everything. And it's only possible because we collectively fund the systems that make it work. Not perfectly, not efficiently, but functionally. And functionality, it turns out, is worth paying for.